the Desert Song Festival is an important, if you like, cross-cultural festival, and art and music and knowledge needs to be shared in lots of different ways. As I said, we're going to have a series of shortish talks. We're going to avoid death by PowerPoint by having plenty of opportunities for yarns and discussions at the end of each one if we have time, and certainly at the end of this session we've got plenty of time set aside for discussions and for the yarning. So what I'd like to do first of all is to introduce Damian Morgan-Bullitt, who's a Yorta man who lives on the Murray River in the Ichika-Mawama area. Damian has been or was co-chair of the National First Peoples Gathering on Climate Change that was held in Cairns in 2021. He was also very much involved in organising the 2018 First Peoples Dialogue on Climate Change that was held in Yorta country. And then finally, just because he had nothing else to do, he was a co-author of the climate chapter in the 2021 State of the Environment report. Damian, please come and join me on the stage, but I understand you're also going to share the stage. Should I invite up, my understanding is Simon, you're going to join us as well, and Jara, are you coming up as well? Take it away.
Thanks, David. Sure, I'll get this clicker thing here. So we've changed things around a little bit. So on the move, how does this work?
I have no idea.
Come on, David. Can we just go to slide? I think, what number is it? 4, 5? I'm not sure. It's not working. Ah, here we go. Right now I'm working. So first of all, look, this is just I'm talking about the First Nations, National First Peoples Gathering on Climate Change. But before I do that, there's a little background to that. So up here, we had, during lunch, we had a bit of a video that you might have just caught the end of, but that was essentially a video that came out of our first gathering, I guess, but it was called, it was more of a dialogue on climate change adaptation. So that was in 2012, which sort of led us to being approached by the NEST program at the time through the Earth Systems and Climate Hub, I think, Change Hub, at Yorta, and we agreed then to host a bit of a dialogue on climate change, a national dialogue again around that. So I think this is the button. That's the one that worked before, but God damn it, no, backwards, forward. Ah, here we go. Right, now I'm cooking. So we just we established a bit of a steering committee that was worked through a number of processes, but it was mainly around free informed prior consent processes, and we also engaged each of the traditional owner groups that nominated someone to be on the committee to go and seek their own endorsements to be on the committee from that traditional owner group. So it wasn't about representation, it was more about participation, but having that endorsement from their First Nations group. And all of us was able to do that. And in after all of those processes, we came together as a steering committee and started planning the national gathering, which was obviously during COVID, and it took us, was it about 3 or 4 years to get it together, and eventually we held it in Cairns in March 2020. I can't see. So one of the things that came out of that in 2018 as well as 2021 was the First Nations People's Statement on Climate Change. And I've chosen a few probably prevalent ones here that we focused on a bit through our SOE. When we was writing up the SOE stuff, we had these in our mind, although we did put the full statement in the SOE report as well. And you'll see a bit of a link to there. I'll just let you read through that, but I'm going to invite Jara now just to talk a little bit about the process of how we come through the statement and having it developed and those sort of things.
Yeah, so I'm part of the steering committee, but I thought I'd just give a little overview of like what the vibe was like in Cairns, because I came in after the Yorta dialogue. So, but generally speaking, how are we going? Which one's which? Is that better?
Yep.
All right, thumbs up. Thumbs up all around. Yeah, so that was really, really exciting. So basically, if you imagine we had a conference hall and lots of traditional owner groups from all over came into Cairns, so including from Western Australia all the way through Torres Strait mob as well came in, and there was lots and lots of community groups there. They were represented by elders and ranger groups, and throughout that week we had basically the idea was to have both climate scientists talk a little bit about the kind of Western scientific background that they are coming from, and explain a little bit about the different impacts of climate. And there was different themes like water, fire, land management, and there was like a bunch of themes. And then the different Indigenous participants got together in dialogue to have a chat about these different issues. And over that week, we also came up with what would go into that statement. So it was really, really exciting. It was great to see. It was kind of one of the first times I think I'd been at a event where there were so many different communities all kind of coming together to share some of their experiences of climate change and how they were feeling about the current state of climate action in Australia. And that was in 2021. So if you can imagine, it was not good and still isn't particularly great, but it was getting everyone's voice to speak up about those issues and the particularities of like what was occurring in their communities and how they were managing those impacts. So it was really, really exciting. And yeah, it was lots of just really important voices. And I think David would agree that over that, what was intended to be a kind of presentation and then conversation format ended up being a lot of listening actually from the non-Indigenous participants on how climate and climate change discourse wasn't necessarily matching with experiences in community, and that concerns were far greater than just that kind of topic. You know, it actually was everything from irrigation problems through land management problems through climate impacts. And it was, so that's kind of where that statement came out of in the end, was a lot of that different kind of cross pollination of issues and things like that. So yeah, I just wanted to share a bit of that experience with you as a participant of that event. And yeah, it was really, really great. So excited for the next platform, how it will look. We're not sure yet, but yeah.
Probably just wanted to go more into the original premise was to bring Indigenous nations and First Nations people together with Western scientists to try and have a dialogue together to work out, how we can work together to address climate change on country. And to do that, we had to develop some tools to allow us to do that together. And a couple of those tools are listed down here on the slide here in the bottom, but probably the main one was, developing a code of conduct for non-Indigenous participants, for scientists to participate in the dialogues. And it was very contentious for science because, their research is open source and, why do we have to do a code of conduct? But it was important for us to know that they was on board with what we was doing, because as Indigenous peoples, we come there with our own intellectual property, our knowledge around country, and we're bringing it together with Western science. We want to be able to protect that. We want to know that Western scientists are there, are willing to go through the same process that we are. So that was important for us to ensure that they had that understanding of what we go through as traditional owners. And when we give our information across, that it's a two-way street, and it's not, you know, one is more important than the other. So that was important for our community to ensure that that process took place. And everyone signed up, which was really, really good. Probably the other thing is that we developed a cross-cultural, a bit of a guideline for engagement of First Nations people as well, for scientists and researchers. And that was important, and that came about through us attending, a few committee members attending AMOS in Fremantle in 2020. And that came about just because we got constantly asked the question, well, how do we engage with First Nations people? You know, how does that happen? You know, what's the first step? You know, and a lot of us come from different parts of Australia and country, and we all had different ideas about how we wanted to be approached. So we set about just putting a framework together, a guideline, and how it goes from there is essentially up to the nation group that you're dealing with. So that's so that was some of the key tools that we developed in bringing this gathering together. And I'll get Simon now to talk a little bit about what the next steps are, because I'm not really sure, but I know some of it, but he'll fill us in more about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you. Thank you, Yorta. I felt really humbled. That was the first time I was challenged as a Western scientist to go into Indigenous engagement, was the 2018 Yorta dialogue. And I agree with Yorta that it was really amazing, the 2021 Cairns National Gathering, with so many people in the room, the chance to talk about the science and to discuss it with people, you know, as David introduced nicely earlier today, who have this really profound, long-standing knowledge of climate and climate change in this country. So that was a real privilege. For me, one of the things I really like about it as a scientist in the previous Earth System and Climate Change Hub that David led, and is now the leader of the Climate Systems Hub, the hub is really about joining together. So we bring universities, we bring Bureau of Meteorology, we bring CSIRO together, that also we have this really strong mandate to work in Indigenous partnerships through the National Environmental Science Program. So, you know, two of the really special things in my time with NESP have been that Cairns gathering and that Yorta dialogue. And I'm really humbled that going forth, we have some really good plans working with Damian and Yorta and others from every state and territory to form a national First Peoples platform on climate change, which I hope we'll be having our first meeting next October. I'm not on the platform, I'm just facilitating it through the Climate Systems Hub, but we'll be there up at Thursday Island later this year to really kick that ball rolling. And it's really important, I think, in this engagement. And, you know, there's quite some years behind us, but there's quite some years in front of us, and there's a lot of work to be done. It's not just the climate change. Every time I talk to traditional owner communities, one of the first things that comes up is, what are we actually going to do about it? Where's the climate adaptation? And these are real challenges going forward. So, you know, we're planning actually 2 more national gatherings in the next 6 years out to 2026 while the current Climate System Hub exists. But I think importantly also 5 at least further regional gatherings around the country, where we'll go into a co-design process with traditional owner communities who will be the respective hosts of those regional gatherings, and start to focus, you know, in place on country climate change problems, and to have a real genuine and deep discussion about action as well, and adaptation. So I think I'll leave it there and pass back to our chair. David, thank you.
Thank you very much to Damian. You're going to finish off, Damian?
Hey, you're right, sorry. I'll just finish off. I said thank you, but a picture tells 1,000 words, as I say. So this is a photo of my country, of the Barmer Lakes in the Barmer National Park. In the bottom left, and right at the top corner on the right, you can see Moira Lakes. Now this is across jurisdictions. New South Wales and Victorian border runs in between these 2 lakes. We have jurisdictional issues between Victoria and New South Wales. They have very different ideas about how water is managed. And it's a big issue for us in terms of how we protect country. And right now we're having sludge issues within the Murray-Darling Straits, particularly in our country from the 1880s gold rush era. So, you know, we're dealing with that now in this part of country. So this is Narrows. This is the narrowest part of the river in the system. And yeah, so I just want to finish off on that and thank everyone for listening. Thank you.
So thank you to Damian and Jarrah and Simon for that, you know, sort of overview of that gathering and the plans for multiple gatherings, both regional and national again.